My name is Folake Adeyemi. I am 25 years old. And this is the story of how I turned my best friend into a cat. But before you judge me, watch till the end to find out why I did it. I was 11 years old when I first hear the phrase "A with grave KJP item." My grandmother whispered it to me like a warning, never loud enough for the words to settle. Secret sacred tales it meant, or forbidden story. Either way, it was never meant for ears like mine. Or so I thought. Years later, I found it again. It was a hot Thursday in April, the kind of day that sticks to your skin like wet clothes. Nipah had struck again, and I was searching through my grandmother's storage hunting for candles when my hand hit something hard and wooden beneath a pile of old Ankara fabrics. It was a small box. It wasn't locked, but it was heavy. Inside were dried leaves wrapped in brittle paper, bottles with names I couldn't pronounce, and a scroll tied with a red thread. I untied the scroll with shaking fingers. The scroll cracked as I opened it. One word jumped out at me immediately: Adida. The rest was written in old Yoruba language. They were chants, rituals, and spells. Something about the air changed in that moment. The breeze stopped. Even the geckos on the ceiling held their breath. I closed the box quickly and took it with me to my room with my heart pounding like talking drums at a festival. That was the beginning. I've always been a quiet and reserved person, what the English people call an introvert. I lived with my grandma in a faded bungalow in Mushin, Lagos, where neighbors don't smile much and the cats meowed louder than the mosque calls on Friday. Most people knew me as BC's best friend. That used to mean something. BC and I grew up together from Pampers to NYSC. We used to call ourselves twins from different homes. We attended the same school, same church, and did everything together. We plaited each other's hair under Iroko trees and shared bolai and groundnut from the same newspaper wrap. We even promised to marry brothers so that nothing would separate our friendship. Our bond was like juju magic, until it wasn't. My friendship with BC started fading when I realized she wanted to be me so badly. She would accidentally take credit for my ideas in class. Moved with boys I liked and laughed when I stuttered during social studies presentations. But the worst part of everything was that she was always perfect. BC was smart, beautiful, and loud. People said she lit up the room when she entered. They said I was the calm one. That was just a polite way of saying I'm invisible. Still, I stayed loyal. I told myself she loved me in her own way. That maybe I was just being too sensitive. But deep down I knew something was very wrong. Everyone forced me to believe that BC was my blessing, my star, and my luck. But they were wrong. BC wasn't my blessing. She was my curse. One fateful day I came back home from work only to find BC sitting close to Segun, my fiancé. They weren't doing anything wrong, but I could sense the fear on their faces the moment they saw me. After that day, I still saw them holding hands together and smiling at each other at a local booker. But in all of this, I kept my cool and assured myself that they weren't doing anything wrong. A month later, Segun broke up with me and got married 3 months later. But it wasn't to BC. It was to an unknown woman I had never seen before. I cried for months and BC was always there by my side, consoling me with words of encouragement. A year later, I met Adebayo, a very rich man who had lived all his life in London. He came back to the village for his father's burial and that was how we met each other. BC was very excited for me. I could see genuine happiness written all over her face. But her next action shocked me to my bones. A week after Adebayo paid my bride price, I saw him and BC holding hands, laughing like they had known each other for years. I wanted to approach BC and warn her. I didn't want what happened the last time to repeat itself again. Affliction no day take 2 times, I told myself. But just as I was about to pour out my anger on her, something held me back. I didn't know what it was, but whatever it was never wanted me to make any move. And just like before, Adebayo got married to a woman I had never seen before. The day I heard about Adebayo's wedding, I sat on my bed thinking about everything that had been going on in my life. Why is every man I fall in love with getting married to another woman? Could BC be behind all this? Is she talking badly about me behind my back? I asked myself. The next morning while I was drinking Gary and groundnut, my phone buzzed. The email had no subject line, no name, just a sender ID. I almost deleted it, but something made me click. Inside was a single sentence and 4 attachments. She stole what was meant for you. Open your eyes. The first attachment was a photo, a blurry screenshot of a scholarship award letter addressed to Folake Bimbala Adeyemi. That was my full name, and even my date of birth and WAEC results were written on the document. I stared at it with my spoon frozen halfway to my mouth. The second photo made my heart stop. It was of BC standing in front of the British Embassy holding a file with my name on it. She was smiling and looking very confident. She was also wearing the exact dress I had misplaced 3 years ago. The one I assumed got lost in the hostel laundry. The third attachment was a signed embassy form application for visa. Folake Adeyemi was written on it. But the passport photograph that was attached to it was BC's face. The final file was a voice note, and I pressed play. Her voice was light and casual. She will never know. But Folake thinks the email got lost. I just needed to change 1 digit. 1 tiny digit. And the embassy sent it to me instead. She will bounce back like she always does. But me. I deserve this. I'm tired of being second all the time. My hands went cold. How could BC do this to me? I remember that year vividly. How I waited for a scholarship response but nothing came. How I cried when my mates travelled for their masters and I stayed behind. How BC hugged me and said maybe it just wasn't meant to be. My chest burned. I felt dizzy, betrayed, used, and stupid. While I was still standing, I remembered the scroll and what I experienced that day. I recalled the strange chant written in smudged ink. I remembered how the wind had stopped moving when I opened it. And with a heavy heart, I walked straight to the storage room and pulled it out again. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember the heat in my body, the rage in my throat. My eyes scanned the old Yoruba lines until I found a section marked Ejia, which means to cast punishment. I read it aloud and the air in my room shifted. The curtains lifted slightly even though the windows were closed. A drop of blood dripped from my nose, but I didn't stop. I didn't scream and I didn't flinch. I just whispered the final lines with my eyes burning and my heart pounding. BC Saya Logbo. BC Saya Logbo. BC Saya Logbo. I said it 3 times and fell to the ground. The next morning when I woke up, everything felt off. The air was too still, like the world was holding its breath. Even the usual sound of the neighborhood generator chorus was missing. I woke up with a strange tightness in my chest. Not fear exactly, just a heavy feeling. Then I noticed my phone buzzing non-stop with messages from people in our WhatsApp group. Has anyone seen BC? She didn't come home last night. Her mother said her phone is off. Hope it's not another kidnapping. No, oh, they said. My heart skipped. I sat up quickly, trying to remember the night before. My mind flashed back to the scroll, to the chant, to the blood that dripped down my nose. But that was just a moment of madness, right? However, I pushed it out of my head and went outside to fetch water. Immediately my legs touched the sand. The first thing I saw was a little black cat sitting calmly at the edge of our compound. It wasn't the usual street cat type. This one looked sleek, well-fed, and very elegant. Its fur was black and shiny. Its eyes followed me as I walked, like it knew me. But that wasn't what made me drop the bucket. The cat was wearing a golden anklet. Not just any anklet. BC's anklet, the one she wore everywhere. I froze and my bucket fell from my hands. The cat stood up and walked slowly towards me. It wasn't meowing or purring. It was just walking towards me like it was being controlled. I ran back into the house, slammed the door, and locked it. My breathing was loud in my ears. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. My mind was spinning. I kept replaying everything. The scroll, the spell, the blood from my nose. That final line, BC Saya Logbo. Had I really done this? Did the spell actually work? I asked myself. Then I stood up and peeked through the curtain, but the cat was still there, sitting calmly on the porch and staring at me. I called out her name with a low voice. BC. And to my surprise, Its ear twitched. I said it again, louder. "BC." And the cat stood up. I gasped and slammed the door again. Later that afternoon, I opened the gate slightly and tossed some fish outside, but the cat didn't touch it. Instead, when the neighbor passed by and greeted me, the cat hissed softly, eyes locked on the man until he disappeared. I stared at it with my heart pounding fast. That man, he was the one who helped BC mail my documents years ago. I remember him now. How they would laugh together in front of me while I stood confused, wondering why I wasn't getting any replies from the scholarship board. The cat recognized him. That night I brought the cat inside and told Grandma it was a stray that looked sad and lonely. I even gave it a name, Midnight. But deep down I knew it wasn't a stray. It was BC. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't even know if I wanted to. For once in my life, I felt like I had power, control, and peace. But something about the way the cat watched me made my skin crawl. I moved my things into a separate room and locked my door every night. But every morning it was waiting for me at the door. At first it was easy to pretend like everything was fine. I fed the cat, bathed it, and even took selfies with it and posted online with silly captions like "New Pet Alert." People commented, laughing and calling it cute. And for the first time in years, I wasn't BC's friend. I was just Folake. I became more visible and no longer had to hide in the shadows. My ideas were noticed, and people now listened when I spoke. My supervisor even gave me projects that would have gone straight to BC. But when it seemed like everything was falling in place, that was when the cat started digging. It began with the backyard. Every evening it would disappear behind the cashew tree and start clawing at the earth. I thought it was just animal instincts until one morning I heard scratching right by my window. I looked out and saw it pulling something out of the dirt. A plastic folder. It looked very dirty, but it was sealed. I ran outside and snatched it before it could drag it away. Inside were documents I hadn't seen over 3 years. My original scholarship letter, stamped and signed. The one I thought never came. I nearly dropped it. My name was there. My address and the full offer dated 2 weeks before BC's trip to the embassy. Tears rushed from my eyes. I stared at the cat. It stared back with its tail still and eyes heavy with something too human to ignore. "You have been hiding this," I whispered. "You buried it." The cat meowed softly like it was trying to explain itself. But a few days later, something even stranger happened. Grandma was sweeping the sitting room when the cat walked in. Usually it ignored her completely, but this time it hissed angrily at her like she had done something wrong to it. Grandma dropped her broom and turned slowly to face the cat. The air grew cold. She looked from the cat to me, then back to the cat. She whispered, crossing herself. "Folake, this is not a cat. Where did you find it? Send this evil thing away." Grandma yelled angrily, but the cat kept hissing and almost clawed her wrapper. I stood there confused. Why is BC hissing angrily at Grandma? Is everything okay? I asked myself. Still, I refused to send BC away. I wanted to keep her under my watch. I was afraid that one day someone or something might turn her back to human, and I never wanted that to happen. Even though I felt bad for what I did, I found true happiness, and my happiness was now my priority. People invited me to events. My designs were going viral on social media. I was interviewed on local podcast, and they even called me a fashion star in Lagos creativity. All the things BC once had were now mine. A few weeks later, the cat started acting strange again. It began scratching a wall in the corridor, the same wall, same spot, over and over again. One night I followed the sound and watched it. It clawed at the plaster, slow and steady, like it knew something was inside. I pulled it away, locked it in the kitchen, and stared at the scratched wall. My chest tightened. What was she looking for? And more importantly, what was buried there? I asked. I couldn't sleep that night. The scratching had stopped, but now it was inside my head. And every time I closed my eyes, I heard it, that slow, desperate sound of claws against concrete. The next morning, I waited until Grandma had gone to market. Then I took a hammer from her old toolbox and stood in front of the wall, the same spot the cat had been clawing for days. My heart beat so hard I could feel it in my throat. I pressed my ear to the wall, but I heard nothing. Then something inside me whispered, "Break it." So I did. The first hit cracked the plaster. The second chipped it. By the third, dust filled the air and a small hole appeared. I reached inside with trembling fingers and touched something cold, like metal. It was a small tin box wrapped in black cloth. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Inside was a single item, a USB flash drive. I didn't plug it immediately. I sat there for hours just staring at it, wondering what the contents might be. What was so important that BC as a cat would try to dig it out? I asked. Later that night when the house was quiet, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one folder which said "Read Me." And inside were 7 audio files labeled by dates. The last one was 2 days before the scholarship trip. I clicked on the first one and BC's voice filled the room. "If you are listening to this, Flake, I guess you finally found out. I didn't know where else to put the truth, and I couldn't risk telling you then. You would never believe me." Her voice trembled a bit. It started with Uncle Tunde. You know, the one who used to come during Alaya. He's part of a very old but powerful group. They called it Egbewo. Every 10 years they select a female from the family. One of the daughters must be sacrificed to keep the family success going. I covered my mouth and my stomach flipped. It was supposed to be you, Flake, not because you are weak but because you are special. You were born on the sacred date and Grandma knows this. My head was spinning. I paused the audio. My hands were shaking too hard. Then I pressed play again. When the scholarship came, they saw it as the perfect opportunity, a quiet way to send you off. You would go abroad, disappear, and no one would ask too many questions. But I couldn't let it happen, so I switched the letters. I pretended to be you. I thought maybe if I took your place, you would be left alone. I didn't think they would accept me. I thought they would reject any change, but they didn't. They were too happy to get anyone. I almost backed out, Flake, but then I saw you smiling the day I left, and I knew I made the right choice. And for your suitors, I was the one who convinced them not to get married to you. If you had gotten married, Flake, you would have died during childbirth. This is the tradition of your family. I was afraid the day I found out. I had known this since we were in secondary school. That's why I did everything I did back then. I didn't want your family to see you as something useful. I wanted them to see you as ordinary so that they would leave you alone. Flake, I was scared of losing you. Remember, I was diagnosed with fibroid? I didn't twist it because I knew there was no need to. I wanted to take your death and your pain to my grave. That's how much I loved you, Flake. I sat there in silence, unable to move. BC hadn't betrayed me. She had saved me. She took my name, my chance, my whole future. Not because she was selfish, but because she was protecting me from something I didn't know existed. And now I had turned her into a cat. I didn't notice the tears until they hit the keyboard. My chest ached. My throat burned. I stood up and walked slowly to the kitchen where the cat, BC, was curled up on the floor. She looked up at me. I looked into her eyes. For the first time I saw her clearly. Not as a monster, not as a rival, but as my sister, my shield. I sank to the floor beside her and whispered, "What have I done, BC?" The next morning I decided I was going to set things right. I told Grandma I was going to visit my aunt in the next community. At first she refused. I saw the unwillingness to let me go in her eyes. And for a moment everything clicked. All this while she had been nurturing me as a sacrifice. I didn't say a word to her. I just carried BC and left. I was going to visit a powerful Babalawo who would reverse the curse. He was known throughout the community for signs and wonders. He was my only hope. That day I walked for 3 hours before getting to his shrine hidden deep in the forest. When I arrived, I told Babalawo everything that had happened, and luckily he had a solution to my problems. He told me everything I needed to do, and I left. That night around 12 midnight, I took the scroll and came into the bush. I sat down on the wet grass and opened the scroll one last time. My voice trembled as I chanted the reversal. Each word felt heavier than the last, dragging something out of me. My head spun, my knees buckled, but I kept going. Then the wind roared and the cat let out a loud human-like cry and began to shake violently. I screamed her name as light burst from her body, and just like that, she became normal. I collapsed beside her, sobbing uncontrollably. But before I could say a word, BC hugged me tightly and whispered, "I forgive you, Folake. It is all my fault. I wish I had told you everything from the start." "It's not your fault, BC. I was being wicked and inconsiderate. Please forgive me." I apologized again. I finally reconciled with BC and our bond grew stronger than ever. I can confidently tell you that our relationship is one of a kind. It was built in heaven. Show me a friend like BC. I bet you don't have one. Thank you so much for watching and stay blessed.